help you all understand who you're listening to, in case you didn't know. All right. I am a big fan, proponent, and practitioner of critical thinking. What does critical thinking mean? Critical thinking means, in part, this is not all of critical thinking, but part of critical thinking means that a person is able to stand on either side of an argument and argue either side convincingly. So in today and tomorrow's episodes, where today I'm going to tell you why Kamala Harris will win, and tomorrow I'm going to tell you why Donald Trump will win, I am making a case personally for neither one of them, but I'm going to make a case for both of them. Actually, I'm going to do both over the next 2 days. And I'm going to argue, I'm going to tell you why, if Kamala wins, this is why. And tomorrow I'm going to tell you if Trump wins, this will be why. I'm basically going to lay out the reasons why either one of them will win. And I'm guessing, given the information we have as of today, I'm recording this about 2 months before the election, and you're hearing it about a month before the election, that these are the two candidates that we have. Assuming that everything stays at least the same in that part, these are the two candidates we have. So a couple other things you need to understand. I'm able to argue either side of a conversation. Even if I'm strongly of the opinion on one side, I can argue the other side. And in these two episodes, I'm not telling you what my personal opinion is on the election. I'm just telling you what my opinion would be if I was on either side. All right, let's just get it that. Actually, I'm not even going to say it that way. I'm really just speaking about this objectively as I can, from speaking kind of above the fray. These are not my personal reasons why either would win. These are the reasons why I believe consensusly why either one would win if they do. Secondly, back in 2020, if you were not around back in 2020, I did a couple of live streams. I didn't do these as episodes, but I did them as live streams on YouTube. I should have did them as episodes as well, but these I'm going to do this year. I'm going to fix that issue. I'm going to do it as live streams, and I'm going to do it as episodes, as I'm doing right now, where I did one where I said why Donald Trump's going to win in 2020. And then the next day I did another one that said why Joe Biden is going to win in 2020. And of course, the people who liked Trump came on and praised my Trump video, and they bashed the Biden video. And the people and the opposite side, people who like Biden, bashed my Trump video and they praised the Biden video. And in that same election cycle, I also made a couple other episodes. I told you that these were episodes number 1634 and 1635. Episode 1634 came out on election day 2020. You see what episode number we're at now. So I've been going the whole time since then. I gave you the 2020 election plan. I was specifically speaking to Black America in episode 1634. But this year, I'm going to give you an election plan again, either on or before election day. And I'm going to tell you my election plan for America, period. I already got the episode ready. I just haven't recorded it yet, but it's coming. And then I did an episode on the day after, for the day after the 2020 election. And I said, what do we do now that the election is over? Or at least we think that it's over, because we know the 2020 election, notoriously, there was a long period between the election day ending and then the actual results being verified, confirmed, certified, whatever you want to call it, and the whole fiasco that went along with that we're not going to revisit, at least not today. The point being that when it comes to these elections, I am going to share you some perspectives here, not necessarily my opinions. There will be opinions mixed in, but it's mostly my perspectives. And I want you all to always remember that what we do over here at Work on Your Game, in case you didn't know or you may have forgotten, that we start and end with the person in the mirror. We start and end with the person in the mirror, meaning whether it's Mrs. Harris, whether it is Mr. Trump or President Harris, President Trump, whoever is going to be, we start with the person in the mirror and we end with the person in the mirror. And guess what? Neither one of those individuals I just named is in the mirror when you look in it. All right. The only person that sees Kamala in the mirror is Kamala. The only person that sees Trump in the mirror is Trump. So if either one of them listen to this show, I'm telling them the same thing I'm telling you, is that we start and end with the person in the mirror. What does that mean? That means that while you may have strong opinions, while you may vote, or maybe you already voted, or maybe you're not going to participate in voting, or you don't care about voting, or whatever your situation, maybe you don't live in America, so therefore you cannot vote, but you still have some interest in what happens in this process. I want to let you know, in the Work on Your Game world, we're always coming back to the person in the mirror. I don't care who wins. We're always coming back to the person in the mirror when you're talking to me or hearing from me about your situation, your plight, your circumstance, whatever you're doing. We're always coming back to the person in the mirror. Have I said that often enough? Okay. So as I said, anybody who chooses to offer an opinion on a subject should have the ability to do what I'm doing here, which is explain both sides of the argument, regardless of what side you are actually on, and be able to make a convincing argument for either side of the argument, because a critical thinker is able to do this. So whether I am supporting the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate or the independent Green Party candidate, or I'm not voting at all, or I hate all of them, or I love everybody and I can't decide, I will be able to make an argument on either side. And I'm not going to speak for the independent third party voters or independent third party candidates. I'm going to just go with the Democrat and the Republican. That's what I'm going to do this year. Okay. That's what I did for Joe Biden and Donald Trump back in 2020, doing it again now. And if we're still recording and publishing in 2028, I would do the same for those two candidates. Now, again, the points I'm going to make here today and tomorrow are not necessarily my personal opinions. It will be obvious once you start hearing what I have to say. But the reasons that these things could and would happen is what I'm going to explain. When I am sharing my opinions on these points, you'll know that I'm giving you an opinion because it'll sound like an opinion. It'll be very clear. I'm giving you the reasons in general, followed by my explanations of those reasons, which will contain my explanations for the reasons will contain some opinion mixed in. Okay, so I'm not even trying to pull the wool over your eyes and tell you that everything I'm telling you is completely objective or quote unquote fact based. I'm telling you my perspectives and I'm giving you the reasons for the perspectives because most voters are not voting based on facts. They're voting based on their views, which include their opinions. So I'm going to tell you what the consensus views would be that would lead to either outcome. Today, we're going to start with Vice President and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. If she wins, here's why. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is why Kamala Harris will win the 2024 presidential election. Number one, a significant number of people, American voters, when I say people, I mean American voters, have been indoctrinated to believe that they must vote for anyone other than former President Donald Trump. If Kamala Harris wins the 2024 presidential election, one of the main reasons she will win is because a significant number of American voters have been indoctrinated to believe that they must vote for anyone other than Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump. Now, when I say that, I'm not necessarily saying that these people have been hoodwinked or hypnotized in some way or tricked into believing that they need to vote against Donald Trump. I believe that some of you are listening to this who fall into this category that you are so against Donald Trump for whatever reason. I may get to some of those reasons here in today's episode, that it doesn't matter who is running for the Democratic Party. As long as you're voting for someone other than Donald Trump, you're going to vote for that person. You are a never Trumper, I guess you can call it. That's what they call themselves, never Trumpers, or an anti-Trumper, or you're just a person who loves anything that you can present as being opposing to Donald Trump. You love democracy, or you love people who don't get found liable for rape, or you love people who have not been convicted of fraud, or you love people who haven't cheated on their wives, or you love people who haven't had sex with a porn star, you love people who haven't gone through 5 or 6 bankruptcies, or you love people who don't have who are not orange, and you love people who, what's another thing he did, who didn't say grab him by the pussy, or you love people who, what's another thing they say about Donald Trump, who hasn't been on Epstein Island, or you love, y'all know the list. I gave you a good number of them right there. Y'all get the point. You are going to vote for anyone who goes against that guy. And again, I'm not saying that you're right or wrong. What I'm saying is, if Kamala wins, one of the main reasons is going to be this right here, that a bunch of people are voting not for Kamala, they're just voting against Trump. She is basically taking the spot of Joe Biden from the 2020 election. A bunch of people voted for Joe Biden not because they like Joe Biden. Nobody likes Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't really have fans. And he didn't have fans in 2020. He doesn't have fans now. He didn't have fans when he got pushed out in August. Joe Biden got voted for because people were voting against Trump. And that's all his campaign had to be. Like, hey, if you don't vote for me, then that means you're voting for Donald Trump, and you hate Donald Trump, so you might as well vote for me. Like, I could have won the 2020 election going against Donald Trump by just presenting myself as being anybody other than Donald Trump. All right, that's Kamala's campaign strategy. That needs to be her strategy. If she's not using it, she should be. All right, some of you are listening to my voice right now who are in this category. Now, while I am a critical thinker, I'm too much of a critical thinker to ever think in this way that I'm describing. I'm not mad at anybody who does think this way, because a lot of people do think this way, and we can't act like they don't exist whether you agree with them or not. Again, so any of you who is a Trump supporter or Trump fan and you're annoyed by the fact that these people exist, that doesn't change the fact that they exist. So we should recognize that they exist, because they need to be dealt with, because whether Trump wins or Kamala wins, these people will still exist. If Trump wins, they're going to get even louder because they're going to be mad that he won again. And if he loses, they're going to be loud because they're going to be happy that he lost again. So these people exist. We can't act like they're not there. Okay? So we got to understand these people exist. Emotions, ladies and gentlemen, tend to overpower logic. Most people are much more emotional thinkers than they are logical thinkers, even though everyone thinks that they're a logical thinker. Most people are not. So I completely understand. I'll be wasting my breath to tell you to not think this way if you already think this way. I know people personally who have said to me, I'm voting for anyone other than Trump. So whoever's running against Trump, I'm voting for that person. Doesn't matter who it is. Again, Kamala, had it been Michelle Obama, had it been the guy from California, Newsom, had it been the lady from Michigan, Whitmer, had it been anybody else, who else could have ran? Had Hillary Clinton jumped up again, had it been Bernie Sanders, doesn't matter. As long as they were going against Trump, there's a bunch of people who said, whoever that is, I'm voting for that person. Donald Trump has a whole bunch of anti-fans. I guess you can call them haters, whatever you want to call them. He has a bunch of people who are going to vote against him regardless of who the person is who is going against him. This is 100% true. Okay. On top of the fact that I don't care who wins this election, I'm going to cover that in a future episode. This indoctrination against Trump has been an excellent strategy used against him by the Democratic Party going back to the 2016 election, which you actually won. They were still using the strategy. It just didn't work enough for him to win, but it made it a compelling case. They made a very compelling case in 2016. He won. They made a compelling case in 2020. He lost, and they're making a compelling case in 2024, which TBD, to be determined. We'll see. Everyone who was against Donald Trump, I guess we must say, the Democratic Party has used this strategy to not only get the Democrats riled up, Democratic fans riled up, people who are going to vote Democrat anyway, but also they've gotten some, I guess you could say, people who weren't going to vote engaged, because they're like, well, you can't just let Donald Trump win, so you can't sit down and do nothing, can't sit on your hands, go vote against this guy because of all these negative things that he's going to do. He's going to destroy democracy and be a dictator on day one, and he's not going to let women have control over their bodies, and I'm not going to go over the list every time I mention his name, but y'all get the point. All of you have heard this stuff, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. They also have some people who have been Republicans over their lifetimes have decided, well, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump, so I'm going to be, even though I'm a Republican, I'm still going to vote against Donald Trump because I don't like Donald Trump. And they have made this seem, and I followed this kind of conversations going on X/Twitter on social media. So they are attempting, this is what a campaign is supposed to do. It's not a bad thing. They're making it appear that so many people are flipping sides to vote against Donald Trump. But at the same time, there are a whole bunch of people flipping sides who are normally Democrats, so they're going to vote for the Republican. They just may not have as big of a bullhorn when it comes to announcing what they're going to do. The most important bullhorn is the one at the ballot box, not the one that happens on social media, by the way. So do not be fooled by what you hear on social media, because if that was the case, Hillary would have won in 2016, because social media said there was no way Trump even had a chance. It was going to be a blowout. And then we saw what happened November 8th, 2016. So don't be fooled by social media. Anyway, that's a side note. So people have been taught, rather, many of you listening to this, you've been taught Trump is a racist. He's going to destroy democracy. He's going to be a dictator. And any other negative thing that has been brought up about him, and you don't have to look far to find this material. Go on social media, type in his name, you'll find it very easily. Go on Google, you'll find it. And people have used this as sufficient supporting evidence as to why to never vote for or support or be happy for this guy no matter what. Even in 2016, when he won, people were protesting after he won as if that was going to do something. It did nothing, but people did it. And again, I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong. I'm just explaining to you why Harris can win. That's just the first point. We're not done. Let's move on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, why Kamala Harris will win the 2024 presidential election. This is part 1 of 2. Tomorrow I'm going to tell you why Trump will win. Point number 2. People are excited to see a woman and a minority win the presidency, and they will vote for Harris as a result of this desire. Now, personally, I'll come clean and tell you. In 2008, I voted for Barack Obama. Why? The main reason I voted for Barack Obama is not because I was following his policy plan. I can tell you, I probably didn't know anything about his policy plan. Not because I thought he was going to do anything necessarily, quote unquote, for me or quote unquote for black people. I understood even in 2008 that the government doesn't do anything for people who can take care of themselves. So I wasn't looking for him to do anything for me. I voted for Barack Obama mostly because he was black, and it would be cool to see a black person win the presidency. So when he won, I was happy for him, and I was happy for America, and I was happy for black people who are really emotionally engaged in seeing a black person win the election. I wasn't emotionally engaged in it, but I was happy to see it happen. That's why I voted for Barack Obama. Now, even though I'm still black, and Kamala Harris is, I don't know if Kamala Harris is black. We'll just say she's a minority. We can agree to that. And we'll get to the black part in a second. Kamala Harris is a minority. We can agree to that. And she does have a chance, since Hillary did not win, she does have a chance to be the first person to be president. So voting for someone based on identity, I have grown out of that. That was 16 years ago. I'm not on that anymore. In 2008, that worked on me. It does not work on me in 2024. Me personally. That doesn't mean I wouldn't vote for Harris, but if I voted for her, it's not because of that. Not because, oh, she's a minority, she's a woman, so we got to vote for a minority and a woman. Again, that worked in 2008, ain't working on me now. And there are some Americans who think the same way, and there are some American voters who are still on this. They want to vote for a minority because it's a minority. There are women who are going to vote for her because she's a woman. There are, and that's that. There are people who just want to see change for the sake of change. I'm not a fan of change for the sake of change, but there are people out there who want to do something different just because it is something different, and they will support Kamala Harris just for that reason alone. I don't agree with this, but doesn't mean that they don't believe it. And what people believe is how they're going to vote, and how people are going to vote is what the subject of this episode is. Not what I think you should do, but what will actually happen. Okay? So this is the flip side of what I just told you on point number one. First point was about people voting against something that they hate, which is Donald Trump. This side is about people voting for something that they love, which is seeing a woman and a minority in the presidency. Now, understand, neither of these points has anything to do with substance. We know this is true. All right, voting against Trump is not a substance-full reason, and voting for Harris, being a minority and a woman, is a no substance reason as well. Neither of these is about policy, and neither of these is about the outcomes of what the actual administration would do, or what the administration that you're voting for or against. Again, I don't agree with this line of reasoning, and I'm being generous in even calling this reasoning. This is not really reasoning. This is just reaction. Yeah, that does not change the fact that it's real, it's true, and people are going to vote for this reason. Now, whether it's enough votes for her to win, we don't know yet. But are people going to vote for this reason? Absolutely. And again, that's what today's episode is, why people would do it, not if I think it's smart. Kamala Harris has the same momentum behind her that Hillary Clinton had in 2016, under the premise that it is time to have a woman in charge. She has that momentum working for her. Combine that with the quote unquote black momentum of Barack Obama. She has a kind of a double whammy, black and female. Hillary Clinton was white. Barack Obama was a man. Kamala has the woman and the minority thing going for her. And when it comes to the black part, let me just address this right now. First of all, Kamala Harris we're not 100% sure that she is black. Actually, I'll get to that in 1 second. Let me give you a couple more things on this, and I'll get to that. When it comes to this, here's my opinion. I already told you, but I'll tell you again. We should never be choosing someone to be a leader based on immutable traits. Like, let's get a female in charge just because we never had a female in charge. That's a bad reason to put somebody in charge. And even though I just told you I voted for Barack Obama in 2008 and again in 2012 because he was a black man, that's a bad reason. My reasoning for voting for Barack was foolish. Now, had I voted against him, had I voted for McCain and Romney in 2008 and 2012 respectively, he might still have won. It's not like my vote would have swung the whole thing. But I can admit to myself and to you right now, that's a bad reason to choose somebody. I would never, with my level of understanding and knowledge now, I would never choose a person based on immutable characteristics. Let's not pick a leader. Let's not pick a woman because she's a woman, or a minority because they're a minority, or a gay person because they're gay. This is the whole premise behind the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I'm not a fan of. Putting people in certain places based on immutable characteristics rather than actual substance. Not a fan. And that's why I said DEI is the enemy of high performance. And if you want to hear me talk about that, hear the episode where I talked about that. That was episode number 2199, why diversity, equity, and inclusion is the enemy of high performance, because it starts rewarding people based on traits rather than performance. And I'm hugely against that. Secondly, Kamala Harris has chosen to cosplay being a black American because it will help her politically. Do I believe this is true? I do believe that this is true. That she is cosplaying black American, because we are not 100% sure that she is black or not. We know she's not a black American because her connection to blackness is through her father, who is allegedly Jamaican. Her father's still alive. He has not spoken. He has not said anything. He's not made any public statements since Kamala has been in the public eye. And he is her connection to blackness because her mom is Indian and her dad is allegedly partially Jamaican. But we don't know because the guy isn't saying anything. But there are claims that say several different things, and we don't actually have the answer. We're not 100% sure on this because her claim is her father is Jamaican. She won't speak about it. There are other sources that say her father is half Indian and half Irish, and he just grew up in Jamaica, but he is not actually Jamaican. That's the conflict out here, which we cannot resolve because her father is not speaking. He's not saying anything. And we don't actually know. He's not said. When Kamala was at the Democratic National Convention, she had quote unquote her family come on the stage. There's a bunch of people came on the stage. Her dad was not one of those people. He was not there. So I'm assuming she's estranged from her father. I believe I've heard that. My conclusion as of today is that I do not believe that Kamala Harris is actually black. She is minority. That's 100%. But is she black? I don't believe so. And even though that's what I believe, I can also admit and submit to you that a bunch of black people are going to vote for her because it makes them feel good to vote for a person who at least appears to be black. Whether she's actually black or not might not even matter. Again, I don't agree with this approach, voting for someone because of their color. If Barack Obama was coming out now, I would not vote for him based on that. I might vote for him for other reasons, but not based on his skin color. At the same time, again, I can't deny that this has happened. So do I think Kamala is cosplaying blackness in order to leverage it? I believe that she is. Now, some people will respond to that by saying, well, first of all, we don't know about her lineage. Again, we don't know. We haven't heard from her father. He's a connection of blackness. He hasn't spoken. So nobody can assert anything. Okay, so let's really put that on the table. The other thing is people say, well, Kamala went to an HBCU, which is true, and that she pledged a sorority, which is also true. And neither of those is proof. Let's be clear. Neither of those is proof that you're black. Because there are white people who go to HBCUs. Just because you go to an HBCU does not prove that you're black. It's just because you pledge a sorority that is traditionally black. Again, there are white people who can pledge a sorority that's traditionally black. That does not make you black. None of these are proof that you're black. Now, is it proof that maybe you connect with the community in some way or whatever you want to call it? Sure, but is it proof that you are actually black in your blood? No, it is not. That doesn't mean your bloodline is black just because you went to an HBCU. So anybody who maybe be thinking about coming with that retort, that is nonsense. That is not how you prove that you're black. You prove that you're black, that you had to trace one of your parents somehow has to be black. We know she's not a black American. And there are many black Americans who have an issue with that because they draw these separating lines. And I actually don't even agree with this. These separating lines between different types of black people. So you got Africans, people who actually are from Africa, literally came from Africa, literally live in Africa, or their parents or grandparents are in Africa or from Africa. Then you got Americans who grew up here in America as descendants of slaves. You got those people. Then you got black people who come from other places like England, Jamaica, the Caribbean, etc. And there are many black people who try to draw these dividing lines between these groups. I don't agree with drawing all these dividing lines because black people, it ain't that many of us to begin with. So why are we separating ourselves into even smaller groups? I don't think that's smart. At the same time, I understand how some of these people who believe themselves to be, they call themselves FBA or ADOS. FBA stands for Foundational Black Americans. That means the Black Americans who can draw their lineage back to slavery here in America, not in the Caribbean, but in America, or ADOS. They call themselves African Descendants of Slaves. And I don't know what the difference is between these two groups, but they are not the same. Obviously, apparently, rather, they're not the same because I've seen them, the factions arguing with each other on social media. I don't know what specifically the difference is, not the subject here today, but both of these groups agree that Kamala Harris ain't part of either one, that she's not FBA and she's not ADOS. She ain't from America. Her lineage does not go back to America, yet she's claiming Black American and using that to get votes. Do I agree that that's true? Yes, I do. And do I understand them going against it? Yes, I do. I do understand them going against it because the same thing with Barack Obama. Barack Obama doesn't trace his lineage back to slavery in the United States. Barack Obama grew up in Hawaii. He was raised by his white grandparents. He didn't have any connection to his father, who was his black side. And then he ran as black guy. And there are many black people who were mad about it back then, but we didn't have social media back then to broadcast the message. Now we got the social media and now everybody can talk about it. So do I understand this pushback? Yes, I do. Do at the same time I understand some people want to ignore it and they will ignore it because she's black enough, quote unquote. Yes, that's very true. And are they going to vote for her based on that? Yes, they are. Again, but is the pushback legitimate? Yes, it is. Let's move on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, why Kamala Harris will win the 2024 presidential election. Number 3, the mainstream media is dominated by people who lean left politically. And those people will, and they are, and they will continue to push stories and angles that support Kamala Harris, support voting for her, show her in a favorable light, and they are angling to help her win. Now, this is not new. This is not a new thing. This is already happening. It has been happening for the last decade, specifically once Donald Trump came into politics. As soon as Donald Trump entered politics, let's just call that 2015, when he came down the golden escalator. Everybody, maybe many of you remember that scene. The mainstream media has been staunchly against him. And the mainstream media was already leaned left politically. They leaned more towards the liberal/Democrat side. But when Donald Trump came out and announced himself as a Republican, they started leaning even more, and the line of what is left and right and the center all got shifted more to the left. So in other words, a person who was just in the center back in the day, meaning you were in the center, you had some liberal ideas, you had some conservative ideas. The line has shifted so much to the left that if you're still in that same spot, now people call you right. They call you Republican. They call you MAGA. They may even call you far right or a Trump supporter, even though your views have not changed from 2010. You still have the same views, but the line has shifted so much to the left that now if you have not shifted with it, then people consider you conservative. That's what's happened in just socially, that's happened in the world over the last 10 to 15 years. And again, if you follow these social things, then you probably have noticed the same thing. But the mainstream media has always been left, and they have leaned even more left as Donald Trump has come out and social media has become social media. I talked about this when I talked about the death of journalism. One of the reasons that social media has started to lean more towards having a side rather than just being objective is because it's competing against social media and traditional media, the mainstream media, if I misspoke there, the mainstream media is competing against social media, and social media is just more entertaining. It gives people more of a dopamine hit when you can scroll through Instagram and see likes and comments and shares rather than just reading objective news in the mainstream media. So the mainstream media had to adjust its game based on what social media was doing and find out how can we give people a dopamine hit. And how they give people a dopamine hit is by being more partisan and giving people more of what they want to hear rather than being objective, which might be something people don't like, which will make them basically go away. And this is the reason why journalism doesn't exist anymore, because a journalist's job is to get you the truth objectively, regardless of what the truth is. But if a journalist actually does that, you may tell too many truths that offend people who only want to hear what they want to hear, and they're used to getting it on every other app that they're on. So here you come, journalists giving people something objective. They don't want to hear that shit. Nobody's going to be paying attention to you. You can't make any money. You can't run any ads, and eventually you will go out of business and die anyway. So the mainstream media saw this coming, and they said, well, let's get out ahead of this so we can still exist. And now we got to treat ourselves the way social media treats itself, and we got to give people what they want rather than giving people what's actually objectively true. This is why journalism is dead. Everybody catch that? All right, hope you got that. Rewind it if you want to hear it again. And the mainstream media, again, they picked a side. That's what they did. They picked sides. And the side that they picked was leaning to the left. Why they did that, you can ask somebody else to explain that. That could be a whole hour episode in and of itself. But Donald Trump has been the nominee for the Republican Party for each of the last three elections, 2016, 2020, and now 2024. Now, again, I don't know if this push by the mainstream media and most of social media will continue when Donald Trump is no longer the nominee. I would guess that it will probably die down a little bit. I think things would settle a little bit more and regress to the mean, so to speak, once Trump is gone. After this election, I don't think he's running again, but he wins or loses. But the mainstream media and most of social media social media is based in Silicon Valley, by the way, and Silicon Valley is home of LGBTQ. That's where it started, is where progressivism comes from. These factions spin every story about Donald Trump to be negative. Even a positive thing about him, they spin it to be negative for the most part. And every story about whoever is going against him tends to spin positive. And when I say every, I'm being hyperbolic. Just get the spirit of what I'm saying here. One of the main reasons that journalism has died is because of three things. Let me tell you the three reasons in addition to what I already told you. One, journalism has to compete against social media. And social media is more entertaining and gives more dopamine to the user than journalism does. And therefore, journalism couldn't compete, and they had to adjust. Two, Donald Trump's pointing out of the mainstream media as fake news and basically ridiculing the mainstream media. He did it so effectively because Donald Trump is a very persuasive individual, whether you like him or not. You have to admit that he is. Again, he's been the nominee for the last three elections. He has to be pretty good at something to come down to the final two for the biggest job in the country 3 times in a row. All right, you got to be pretty good to do that. He has so taken control of the narrative around the mainstream media that they have adjusted to what he's doing. He's basically played them like puppets. Even though they're going against him, he's still playing them because he's making them react to him. That's what Donald Trump is doing. When you are causing people to react to you, you are in control. And he has caused the mainstream media to react to him, whether you like him or not. That is true. He has pointed them out as fake news, and he has undermined the belief and the trust that the average American citizen used to have in the mainstream media. Many of us do not trust the mainstream news anymore. We don't trust these people who call themselves journalists. Most of them are not journalists anymore. And I've pointed that out with many of them individually, and I pointed out as a general rule. And Donald Trump played a huge role in this, whether it was something that he said or did, or it was the mainstream media's reaction to him caused us to stop believing them because they are no longer being objective and they're no longer telling us the truth. They're giving us their spin of the facts. What's the difference? There's a difference between a fact and a truth. And any of you didn't know the difference. A fact can be taken out of context. Okay? You can take a fact out of context. I can take any fact about a situation, pull it out of context, and make it sound like anything that I want it to sound like. The truth, on the other hand, is all the facts put together. And I talked about this in episode number 1777. The truth is never sexy, also known as why to not trust the media. Again, I explained that over 1,000 days ago why you cannot trust the media. Episode 2009, Truth is Objective. Episode 2175, The Relentless Attack on Truth. Episode number 2280, The Difference Between Your Truth and the Truth. They are not the same thing. Episode 2379, Truth is Truth and Bullshit is Bullshit. And other things when it comes to the truth. Episode 2737, Facts are not the truth. So any of you ever call yourselves, well, let me point out the facts. Well, facts you can handpick. I can handpick any fact and make you look like a superstar or make you look like a complete bum. If I pull the right facts, I can make you look like anything I want to make you look like. You do the same thing to me. Truth, on the other hand, tells the whole story. Mainstream media used to tell the whole story. Now they only give you the facts that they want you to know. They mix it in with opinion and they present it as truth or they present it as reporting, and we can see through the bullshit now. Donald Trump helped us see through the bullshit, and now we don't trust the mainstream media, and now they're basically spinning out of control. That's what's happening. And again, the last thing about this is the mainstream media is a banning of journalistic integrity, which I just explained, in the name of righteousness. And by the way, this is something that they've come out and said. There are people who are heads of newsrooms in the mainstream media who have come out and said, because he said, yes, it is our job to report things objectively and fairly and be journalists and respect journalistic integrity. However, these are people who run newsrooms who come out and said this, and I'm paraphrasing them. They said, because Donald Trump is so unique and so different in how he does things, it is our responsibility to put a different spin on the way we report on specifically him, just to make sure that we are basically matching the energy that he's putting out. Now, what am I explaining there when I paraphrase what these people are saying? I'm telling you that he calls them to react. You get it? His presence caused them to change the way that they do their job, even though journalistic integrity is journalistic integrity. You don't change what journalistic integrity means just because you're reporting on a different type of person. That's bullshit. That's why journalism is dying, because of this exact point, this nonsense that they came up with as a convoluted excuse for why they are going to spin stories about Trump differently than they would spin stories about anybody else, whether we're talking Bush, Clinton, the first Bush, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, John McCain, or anybody else who's come along. We're going to spin stories about Trump just differently just because Trump. All right, that's what they did. And they knew that they were doing this and they chose to do it. And their excuse was because Trump is so unique. The real reason, that was a good reason. You want to know the real reason? You want to know what the real reason was? The real reason was because they were trying to compete against social media, and social media was kicking their ass. And to this day, social media is kicking the ass of the mainstream media. And when I say social media, let me explain what I mean. I mean user-generated media. So it doesn't necessarily mean TikTok and Instagram. When I say social media, I mean podcasting. I mean YouTube channels. I mean people with their own independent platforms are getting more eyeballs, more ears, and they have more of the trust of the average person than the mainstream media has to this day. Mainstream media is slowly dying because of this very thing. Moving on to point number 4. We're talking here today about why Kamala Harris will win the 2024 presidential election. Number 4, the multiple hoaxes that have been perpetuated against Donald Trump. Let me take a sip of water before I list these because there's so many of them. All right, so the hoaxes. Let's see. You got the Charlottesville fine people hoax. All right, Donald Trump said there are fine people on both sides. That is a hoax, meaning it is not true. Some of you listening to this believe that it is true. It is not true. If you hear everything he said in full context, that ain't what he said. That's some of what he said. That's not all of what he said. Again, I just told you, there's a difference between a fact and a truth. Is it a fact that he said there are fine people on both sides? Yes. Well, what is the truth? He kept talking. After he said that, he kept talking. So you got to get the full context of what somebody said. If I take something that you said out of context and I cut it off at a certain point, I can make it sound like you're saying something the exact opposite of what you're saying. You agree? Okay. So same way you agreed that it will work on you, it worked on Donald Trump. This is called the fine people hoax. He did not say this. In the full context, he immediately said right after that, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis. They need to be fully condemned. He said that. Go find the full clip and it'll show you that what you believe to be true ain't true. And this is 8 years in the running. People still believe this nonsense. So if you didn't know, now you know. Let's get another one. One that is a little bit more controversial. The January 6th insurrection hoax. All right, this is a hoax. January 6th insurrection. January 6th, 2021 was not an insurrection. You know what an insurrection is? It's an attempt to overthrow the government. All right, tell me how a couple people can overthrow the government with no weapons, with all the military power that the United States of America has. That was not an overthrow of the government. Now, did some people trespass in that building? Absolutely they did. Were they trying to overthrow the government? I don't think so. January 6th is not an insurrection. All right, you can't overthrow the government with no weapons. All right, it makes no sense. Most of the people who were in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021 for supporting Donald Trump, they did nothing violent. They did not trespass in the buildings. But if you listen to the stories, you may believe that this was some kind of large-scale planned operation. It was not. Trump even told his supporters, if you go listen, those of you who really want to know, Donald Trump gave a speech before those people marched onto the Capitol. Because once people marched to the Capitol, only some of them went in the building and went around barricades and stuff. Most of the people who marched to the Capitol did not do anything. They just marched to the Capitol. They saw what was happening. They didn't do anything. They didn't commit any crimes, and they went home. Now, the people who did commit crimes and trespass and participate in violence, they got charged. Those things happen. Trump even told his supporters, if you listen to the speech he gave in D.C. on January 6th, which most people have not, I have, listen to the whole speech that he gave. He said, when you all march to the Capitol, because he knew they were going to march to the Capitol, because at the Capitol, he was still at this point claiming that the election had been stolen from him and that he had won. And he wanted them to march on the Capitol to make noise and protest, which is legal, to the lawmakers at the Capitol building that, hey, you all need to do something about the fact that this election has not been free or fair. That was his position, and he has a right to that position, whether you agree with him or not. Donald Trump has a right to that position. He said to his supporters in the speech on January 6, 2021, that when you go there peacefully, he specifically said, peacefully go there and make your voices heard. That is what he said. Listen to the speech. He said it out of his own mouth. When you understand things in context, you know these things. All right, so that's another one, the insurrection hoax. And whether you think the people who went in the building tried to overthrow the government or not, you cannot pin that on Donald Trump when he clearly said out of his mouth, go there peacefully. All right, so you can't say he tried to overthrow the government when at the same time he told the same people, go there peacefully. Which one is it? Can't be both at the same time. Here's another one, the ending democracy hoax. Donald Trump wins, he's going to end democracy. This one is being purported still to this very day. An insurrection one still as well. This one was just made up and perpetuated because no one ever tried to end the practice of democracy. It doesn't make any sense. Donald Trump even, again, if he was trying to end democracy, why would he tell his supporters to go to the Capitol building and talk to the Capitol people? Why didn't he just end democracy? Why didn't he go up there himself with swords and tanks and guns and just kill everybody and take over the country? If that's really what he was trying to do, it wouldn't be democracy. If he was trying to end democracy, why would he be going to the Capitol building and talking to the lawmakers? That's a democratic process. Going to the Capitol building and talking to the lawmakers is literally how democracy works. So if you're trying to end democracy, then why would he do that? Again, that's another hoax that has been told about Donald Trump. And again, all of these are part of the reason why Kamala will win. I'm just explaining these hoaxes because they're actual hoaxes. Now, these are not truths; they are hoaxes. But many people believe these hoaxes, and I'm not telling you what I'm telling you here to make you unbelieve what you want to believe, because I doubt that I'm going to change your mind. I'm not in the business of changing anybody's mind, but I must make these things known and have to point them out so that everybody knows where I stand on these. None of these hoaxes that I just listed, and there are others, but none of these are based in truth. And I just told you why they're not based in truth. They are based in factual pieces of information taken out of context, mixed with opinion and emotion, and then presented as reality. That's also known as propaganda. Okay? And people accept these things as truth because they've heard them so many times. It's emotionalized. And if you already didn't like Donald Trump, it doesn't take much pretext for you to agree with something negative about him. This is how the human mind works. This is the reason why journalism is dead, because it used to be, if a hoax like this came out, a journalist would come out and say, hey, everybody, that's bullshit. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Now you understand what really happened. Everybody would say, oh, okay, and it would die down. But these hoaxes have gone on for years because there's no journalists out there actually telling you the truth. This is the reason why I continually assert that journalism is over. The next time you hear someone claiming that they're a journalist, all right, check their background. All right, see what they have to say about these hoaxes, and you'll find out very quickly whether they're journalists or not. Most of them are not. You can't afford to be a journalist anymore because you can't make any money telling people the truth, at least not in the mainstream space. You can make money telling people the truth if you have your independent space, but in the mainstream space, you can't do it. It's over. So again, many people have accepted these things as truth because they've heard them so many times. This is called the repeater fallacy. You hear anything over and over again, you come to believe it, no matter what it is. And that's exactly how hoaxes work. You just keep spreading it until everybody believes it. There are many people listening to me right now who don't believe that I'm even saying what I'm saying. You don't believe that the things that I said are right because you believe that these things really happen. And that's my point. I just told you, I'm not trying to change your mind. All right, so don't argue with me here. But again, people believe things, and if it's emotional enough and it already agrees with something that you already believe, you ain't changing your mind. And that's why I'm not in the business of changing minds. It's a waste of time. Now, I just told you why I don't believe them, because they're not true. And remember what I told you. Facts and truth are not the same thing. Just because you can point out a fact does not make it the truth. The fact that you're pointing out a fact tells me that you're not telling the truth. Because if you're telling the truth, you tell me every fact, not just the ones that go along with what you want to believe. There's a big difference between the two. Point number 5. Today's topic, once again, I'm telling you why. Kamala Harris. will win the 2024 presidential election. Here's the fifth reason why she will win. The Democratic Party is in support of illegal aliens flooding into the United States and will use the existence of these illegal aliens to get those unregistered Americans ballots, and then votes will be placed on behalf of these illegal people for the Democratic candidate. This one I believe to be true. And the one, everything I'm saying there, I believe to be true. That these are reasons why she will win. If she wins, there's another reason why. That illegal aliens have come into the United States. What is an illegal alien? A person who is in the United States without proper documentation. I know people have changed the language to call them undocumented. Fuck that. I'm not calling them undocumented. If you are here illegally, you are illegal, period. You can soften up and flower up the language however you want. If you are in this country without proper documentation, you are illegal. We can all agree that when Joe Biden took office in 2021, one of the first things he did, his first day executive orders, he relaxed a whole bunch of the standards for the southern border of the United States of America. That is a fact. Okay, so you want to talk about facts? Here's a fact. On his first day, he put a bunch of executive orders out there that softened basically the parameters of how the border was being policed, which allowed a bunch of illegal immigrants to come into the United States during his first days in office. It was 3.5 years into being in office when the illegal immigration thing became louder and louder, and it looked like it was hurting his chances of winning the 2024 election while he was still in it. Joe Biden and the Biden administration came out with a quote unquote bill, a border bill that was designed to protect the border, and it got shot down in Congress by the Republicans. And then the Democrats came out and said, oh, well, we tried to secure the border, but the Republicans shot it down because Donald Trump told them to shoot it down. And they basically spun this whole thing. All of those things I just told you are factual, and that's the truth of what happened. Now, the reason why they did it, why would they come out with a border bill 3.5 years into a 4-year administration? It's because they understood that putting out that border bill would make it look like they were trying to do something. But anybody who has any amount of critical thinking can say, well, wait a minute, y'all been in here for 3.5 years. Why are you just doing it now? I mean, that's a logical question. Why are you just doing it now? You've been in office all this time. Why are you just now trying to secure the border? What was happening to the border before you came out with this bill? Well, what was happening, it was very soft, and a whole bunch of illegal people were coming into the country. We know this is true. And I believe that because we have, what do they call it, early voting, and you can vote by mail these days, that it is very easy in certain places, depending on how the laws are set up, because every state is different, that you can get a legitimate ballot for a person who is not a legitimate citizen, and you can have a vote placed for that citizen, whether they do it themselves or someone else does it for them. And this could help stuff the ballot box, as they say, in favor of whatever candidate is wanted. And that one, we don't know. You can't 100% prove it because that stuff usually happens behind the scenes. Here's something that I do know to be true for Black Americans who are listening to this. Black Americans, one of the reasons why I believe, this is just my belief, that the Democratic Party wants more illegal immigrants coming into the United States, and they want to legitimize these illegal immigrants. In other words, take them from illegal status and make them legal, even though they didn't go through the proper channels, is because the more of them they bring in, eventually their groups will outnumber Black Americans and be the majority minority in America, and therefore securing the votes of those people means they no longer have to cater to securing the votes of Black people. I do believe this is true. Now, again, this is just a theory of mine. It's not anything that I have documents. It's not written down. Nobody has announced this on the internet. This is just a theory of mine that I believe to be true. That Black people are going to be replaced as the majority minority in the United States of America. And if you thought the government wasn't doing anything for you now, wait until that happens, Black Americans. And I will address that in a later episode of the show. So there are people who believe what I just said. There are people who don't believe it. However, if Harris is to win, there are many people who believe that one of the main reasons is that they're going to get votes from people who do not have the right to vote in America, but they will place a vote. I do believe that will happen. So this has to be stated. Now, is the Democratic Party allowing illegal immigrants to flood into the United States? I've already explained that to you. Yes, they are. That one is the truth. Again, the Biden administration relaxed border security laws as soon as Biden came into office. They did that immediately. You can look that up and verify it. And then 3.5 years into the term, they said, oh, let's do something to secure the border, which is bullshit. And most of the money that was going to go to that border security bill, by the way, you know where most of the money was going? Most of the money was going to defense contractors who are making defense tools to support the country Ukraine in their war against Russia, which is a whole other conversation, a bigger conversation. Most of the money of that border bill was not going to secure the United States southern border. It was going to Ukraine, and it was going to defense contractors. And there's a whole other rabbit hole information we can get into with that I'm not going to get into today. So anyway, has the Democratic Party allowed illegals to come into the country? All right, is anybody questioning that? And yes, that's happened. Now, I don't think anybody can deny that. And yes, they are illegal. I already told you. We have laws who can come into the country who cannot. You are here and you are not here based on the law. You're illegal, period. There's no other language you need to use for it. I'm not softening language. I don't like using softening language. I don't like calling abortion, what do they call it? Maternal care or women's, I forget what the language that they're using for abortion. They're calling it something other than what it is. All right, gender affirming care, no, it's child mutilation. Let's call it what it is. All right, adultery is not an affair. It's adultery. That's what it is. And this softening language that people are using these days to make things seem different than what they actually are, I'm 100% against this. There's no such thing as an undocumented immigrant. If you are here illegally, you are illegal, period. There's no other language that we need to use. You combine this, again, as I said, with the mail-in voting, it's very easy that you could juke the voting process and have votes from people who are not even allowed to vote, but the votes will count. And if Kamala wins, I believe that's going to be part of the reason why. With all that said, folks, I gave you 5 reasons why. If Kamala Harris wins the 2024 election, why it would be. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why Trump will win. Let me recap my 5 reasons why Kamala will win in 2024. Point number 1, a significant number of people have been indoctrinated to believe that they have to vote for anyone other than Donald Trump. There are a bunch of people voting for Kamala not because they like Kamala, but because they hate Trump. Number 2, people are excited to see a woman and a minority win the presidency, even though I used to think like this, back in the Barack Obama days. I don't think like this anymore, but it doesn't mean there aren't a bunch of people who do still think this way, and they will vote because of it. Number 3, mainstream media is dominated by people who lean towards the left, including social media, and they will push stories and angles that support voting for Kamala Harris. This is already happening. Number 4, there are multiple hoaxes that have been perpetuated against Donald Trump that people have come to believe, even though they're based in bullshit, like the Charlottesville fine people hoax, the injecting bleach hoax during COVID, the fine people, already told you that, the January 6th insurrection hoax, the overthrowing democracy hoax. All of these are hoaxes that have been labeled on Trump, and there are a bunch of people who believe them, again, even though they are based in complete bullshit, as I've already explained. And number 5, the Democratic Party is in support of illegal aliens flooding the United States, and they could get those people to get ballots, and those ballots will count as votes for the Democratic Party. If Kamala wins, those are the 5 reasons why. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell you the 5 reasons why Donald Trump will win the 2024 presidential election. WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. You want to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. We get through the bullshit. We get all the facts together, come up with the truth, and we go to work based on that with a clear strategy, clear system, and with me as your coach. WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre all